Hey, this is Zach Log the Great. I am here tonight with Nate
Hello again.
and newcomer with Lewis tonight.
Greetings. How y'all doing?
And we are getting together tonight to talk about Rudyard Kipling's poem, Hymn Before Action. Hymn, a song, not a male pronoun in the subject, in the not objective case. Anyway, but before we really get rolling, I would like to mention everybody watching, if you like this discussion, if you enjoy my work in general, please stop by subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great, and you could consider supporting the show. It's $3 a month, not a huge deal, and not hugely expensive. I would appreciate it, but having said that, we'll go ahead and I'll go ahead and read the poem, and we will get started. So, let's see here.
Kind of excited here.
Okay, and there we go. Hymn Before Action.
Ooh.
The earth is full of anger. The seas are dark with wrath. The nations in their harness go up against our path. Ere yet we loose the legions, ere yet we draw the blade. Jehovah of the thunders, Lord God of battles, aid. High lust and froward bearing, proud heart, rebellious brow, deaf ear and soul uncaring, we seek thy mercy now. The sinner that forswore thee, the fool that passed thee by. Our times are known before thee. Lord, grant us strength to die. For those who kneel beside us at altars not thine own, who lack the lights that guide us, Lord, let their faith atone. If wrong we did to call them, by honor bound they came. Let not thy wrath befall them, but deal to us the blame. From panic, pride, and terror, revenge that knows no reign, light haste and lawless error, protect us yet again. Cloak thou our undeserving, make firm the shuddering breath, in silence and unswerving, to taste thy lesser death. Ah, Mary, pierced with sorrow, remember, reach, and save the soul that comes tomorrow before the God that gave, since each was born of woman, for each at utter need, true comrade and true foeman, Madonna, intercede. E'en now their vanguard gathers, e'en now we face the fray. As thou didst help our fathers, help thou our host today. Fulfilled of signs and wonders in life, in death made clear. Jehovah of the thunders, Lord God of battles, hear. And that is the poem Hymn Before Action. Ooh. By Rudyard Kipling.
That's some intense stuff.
So, Rudyard Kipling has produced some powerful verse. Lewis, since this is your first time joining us, would you like to give your impressions of the poem?
Oh, sure thing, man.
Your first thoughts.
Alrighty. Well, to be perfectly honest with you guys, the first impression I get of this is fear. Because if you check the first couple of verses, he goes, the earth is full of anger, the seas are dark with wrath. And that just kind of gives a whole dark and foreboding kind of feeling to it. And he just keeps going on. And then at the end, he turns to God. It's like he's maybe not quite terrified, but definitely unsettled and looking for comfort in the idea that the Almighty can give help at this dark hour. You know the saying that there are no atheists in foxholes? Yeah, that's kind of the feeling I'm getting here.
In this case, trenches. Well, they get going to World War I, yeah?
Yeah.
I don't.
No, Kipling was too early for that, wasn't he?
Yeah.
When
I
was
think he was probably alive. I'm pretty sure he was alive during World War I, but he would not have been fighting. He was past that age. Although, if I recall correctly, possibly one of his sons died in World War One.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the number of casualties England suffered, that's not at all. Everyone had a son who died in World
Right.
War One.
Much. No, those are not the Powerball numbers. Those are the casualty counters for World War One. So yeah.
Ouch. Okay.
Exactly. See,
yeah.
It's rough.
But yeah, and it's and there is. It's not. Give me a second. It's not. This poem. It's not like this total anti-war, diatribe. At the same time, it's also taking very seriously, what is going on. It's not joking about it. It's not taking it lightly. It's not, oh, this is going to be fun. Like,
no, sir.
A lot of people are about to die. We should probably pray for their souls as they're on their way out.
What's interesting too is how even-handed it was. It was that, hey, you know what? We are all about to be put through a terrible ordeal, and Lord, have mercy on each and every soul, both my allies and my enemies, Lord, for all your creation. So, have mercy on us. The pagans we fight against and the pagans that, are standing next to us, Lord, they came because they said they would, and so I guess count that to them as righteousness. It's bad theology, but it's a noble sentiment.
Well, it's the like that. I don't know. Like that's an interesting problem there, because I mean, if
I see your point,
if the cause, I mean, if they're going to war, and they're, by the standards that war is conducted, if they're behaving, honorably in that, then if the cause of the war, if the war was started unjustly, that's not their fault.
No,
and so
but what I'm saying is that, I mean, it's not bad morality, it's bad theology, and there can be a difference. You can behave morally even if you don't believe, or if you believe in, say, pagan gods, but it doesn't change the fact that someone just say, Lord, please forgive them their paganism, because they're helping us. It doesn't cut really a whole lot of ice. Like I said, it's a moving poem, but some pretty unbiblical theology happening here. Although I did learn a new word, and that's not something that happens every day. Froward.
Yes. I had picked that up.
I really thought that was a typo. I was like, what's a forward? No, froward. Is that a typo? I had to Google it. It means hard-headed.
Really?
Yes, I had picked that up from Shakespeare sometime before. I believe it's probably in The Taming of the Shrew, and it most likely occurs a few other places in Shakespeare. But froward.
Yeah. So I looked it up and I was like, oh, it means hard-headed. All right. Unwilling to yield, belligerent. Like, okay, he's hard-headed.
Well, that makes sense, because we're dealing with a military mindset here, and they're always going to have a very serious, very dedicated, we do things like this. We don't laugh, we don't cry, we just forward. And so, you got a point.
The military.
There's
why, right?
Yeah. So, Lewis, I don't know if you are familiar, if you know Nate. Otherwise, he actually just returned from the Air Force. So he has a little more direct knowledge of the military than either of us.
That is true. And I would like to say thank you for your service, sir. I appreciate you, and I appreciate what you have done for this country. Thank you.
It was a good thing. I enjoyed it. So I never know how. Hey, you can't just say you're welcome to that because it sounds so like. But
Well, yeah.
it's like, all right, but I can't really you can't really say thank you back. It's like thank you for not. I don't know. Anyway,
it's like I can't remember who.
My
it is,
pleasure.
But it's like the guy who says,
just Chick-fil-A. My pleasure.
There's this one comedian who says, like, whenever someone appears on TV after some like amazing act, and they're like, "Oh, you're a hero," and he's like, "Oh, I don't think I'm a hero," and he's like, because you're not supposed to say that, no matter what you actually did.
Anyway, back to the poem.
Well, actually, this would actually kind of fit into the poem, because even if these guys who are obviously about to go into a fight would even survive, it's still a rather moving idea that while they are terrified, they're still considering their friends, their foes, the afterlife, the today life, and everything in between that they are risking in what is to come at the dawn.
That's true. And like I said, you didn't sign. I mean, I guess back then, war is always hell.
True.
But the way the West has distilled war to where we tend to lose stuff more than people, right?
We do.
Now, if we fight again, if we end up fighting another like advanced nation, we'll lose a heck of a lot more people. But for the last 30 years, war has been, relatively bloodless. But for all the years before that, it was, the main arm of the battle was always the infantry, and the main weapon of the infantry was always a blade. Even in the early musketry ages, you shot, and then you probably charged. And if you're standing against the charge, you may get to shoot again, but then it's down to, bayonets and gun butts, blood and guts on the floor, and let's do this thing. So, there's the idea that if you march to battle, you're marching to die. You're not marching, you're marching to fight and die. And you want to do as best you can, and, God will save those he saves. And so, like I said, these guys take it very seriously, but that's where there's also the idea of glorious war, is that, it's men who are marching, with discipline and honor to face that mortality, and that's why he asks that. He's pleading salvation for these men, because, he knows that many of them are going to be shuffled off the mortal coil with violence. And so what he's asking for is when he says, that we taste thy lesser death, he's praying salvation for these men so that though their bodies die, their spirits and souls can ascend to heaven rather than taste the great death of eternity in hell. And so it really is moving, and it's a noble desire. And so for that, I got to say, that's a really great attitude to have, is that, we all of us stand on the brink here.
True.
And, please bring your saving knowledge and extend grace to as many of us as you can.
One other thing I find kind of interesting about this poem, it's 6 stanzas. And if you read through it, if you're paying attention as you go through, like each stanza is its own, like has a very distinct idea. It has a very clear structure, and it moves, from one, like the first one, okay, battle is coming, God help us. Second one, we are sinners, we are unworthy, we seek your grace. The third one is for our allies, even if they don't worship you, God, please have mercy on them. And if this should not have been, it's not their fault. And it's just, I find it interesting how very structured it is, and how very deliberate the whole thing is. But it's also not. It doesn't feel. I don't know what word I'm looking for. It doesn't feel artificial. It doesn't feel like stilted, but at the same time, it is very, very deliberately structured, and I find that kind of cool.
I agree.
Well, I mean, Kipling was a military man, so his whole life would be structured. And so it makes sense that his writings would be as well, that, it kind of reflects that ingrained pattern thinking, because what he's doing is he's addressing one problem at a time. And that's how you win a battle. You got to do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this, then you do this. And if all of these objectives are taken the way they should be, we'll win. So this is sort of like it's like he wrote out a battle map, like a campaign map for prayer, and then he marched through all the points.
That's something I noticed as well. I'm glad you pointed that out, because as I was rereading this, I'm like, yeah, I recognize this kind of structure. This strikes a chord with me. This looks really familiar. Then I realized, it's like a prayer. It is written like a prayer. It starts with, like Zach Log said, it starts with one and then builds with another, and then talks about unworthiness and allies and aid and all that as well. In regularly with poems like this, you have like, we're going to win great honor and glory in battle. And there's none of that here.
You get the feeling there's enough of that going around the society already, with the lust and froward bearing, the high-handedness and the haughtiness of, they'll flee when they taste our steed.
Yeah. The whole British stiff upper lip. Yes, we're going to win. We're going to all the British muscle and we'll stiff upper lip and what? Indubitably.
Boy.
Oh, by the way, so a little bit of context. By the way, I should have seen this before. Apparently, this was published in a collection by Rudyard Kipling in 1896.
Oh.
So if that gives you a little context for what it is, I actually don't know if there was a specific war he'd be referring to at the time, or if it's just the general idea. It is kind of, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page right now on this. I should be looking at Infogalactic, but I'm looking at Wikipedia. But
hey, it works.
But anyway, I did find it kind of interesting. There's a note here. In 1930, an English choir drew some attention by refusing to sing the hymn on account of its pagan character. The choir's secretary argued that it might be appropriate for, quote, troops of savages bent on slaughter, represented a, quote, a primitive, unworthy conception of the deity. I have an opinion on that, but I'll throw that out for you two first. I'll let either or both of you two comment on that before I put mine in.
Jehovah of the thunders, great God of battles. It works. This choir director's a soft soap peddler about God, as C.S. Lewis would say. Forgets that our God fights. This is a person who I'm guessing has not read the minor prophets.
True.
The wrathful God who deals in destruction.
I mean, look at
those
Moses.
who deserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at this. An interesting parallel that I hadn't really thought about was that you hear about the angel of the Lord. All throughout the Old Testament, the angel of the Lord, the angel of the Lord, the angel of the Lord. He does these many, many things. For instance, slaying Midianites in their camp. Right?
I remember
the
that.
angel of the Lord passed over and he did these things. Later on, you hear about a very similar character who shares all the same characteristics of the, quote, angel of the Lord. This character, though, in the New Testament is known as the Son of Man. Who is the Son of Man? Well, that's Jesus, who is God. He's God incarnate on this earth. And so all three of those, the man Jesus, the incarnate Son of God, is the one of whom the Son of Man and the angel of the Lord are an image. And so, the mild-mannered carpenter, I say mild-mannered.
Yeah,
compassionate and loving. The compassionate and loving, because mild-mannered doesn't describe Jesus really well if you read everything about him.
Yeah, let's
But
be
the
honest.
loving,
He beat
the wise
people
and
in the temple.
compassionate yeah, the wise and compassionate carpenter from from Nazareth is the mighty the mighty sword of vengeance that has swung down in the olden days to strike the enemies of Israel and God's people. So, yeah, great God of battles works. I don't know what this choir director is mad about.
Yeah, I was looking over some of the wording of this hymn before action, and I see the references to, I see Lord God, I see the Lord, and I honestly don't really see anything that would deserve any kind of paganistic references until the reference of Mary. Because yeah, because some groups, they think that any kind of reference to Mary is pagan or borderline pagan. So I guess it depends on what a branch of Christianity you adhere to. But that's the only thing I can see. Now, if you see anything else, you let me know.
Well,
no,
okay,
they wouldn't have said
I will
pagan.
say,
They just said papist.
for one thing, Nate and I had
Huh?
that too.
Talk to me, man. What's up?
One thing, Nate and I had talked about that a little bit earlier, and we're like, I wouldn't have thought that Kipling was Catholic, and I tried to check up on this, and I believe
Was he?
if the information I saw, I believe he was correct. He was Anglican. At the same time, some some branches of the Anglican Church are more or less Catholicism. So they've stuck pretty closely to most of Catholicism. So
Yeah.
I don't know whether this is what I'm not sure whether this is what Kipling actually believed, or whether this was something that he felt fit as a part of this poem. Like, because artistically you can create things that don't always C.S. Lewis didn't think that God necessarily appeared in another world as a lion. he was creating a story. He was creating art. So you don't necessarily have to believe it. You could just say. And so,
in the Great Divorce, I don't think he really believes that hell is a gray town in perpetual twilight and drizzle, from which all souls at least once ascend to see sort of the foothills of heaven and have their chance to dwell there.
But
in the Great Divorce, that's how he portrays it, and it's a very effective allegory.
True.
As a side note, by the way, if anyone out there has not read C.S. Lewis's Great Divorce, if you've read some of his other works, if you like some of the other things he's written, I highly recommend that book. It is a fantastic book. I really, it's one of his that can nearly bring me to tears. So, just putting that out there as a recommendation. If you like some of his other work, I would highly recommend The Great Divorce. But having opened the floor to comments on that one, I'll throw in my 2 cents. I think. See, my thing is like, if and actually this part of this comes from C.S. Lewis. He said, if there is such a thing as a just war, which is not to say that any particular war is just or unjust, but if there is such a thing as a just war, then logically there is such a thing as an unjust peace. And if it can be right for a people to go to war, if there are causes so necessary that is the right response, the only way to resolve them, then, well, yes, God would be involved. Like the idea that, like, oh, God doesn't get involved with this kind of stuff. God doesn't touch these kind of things. If God is our creator, and if God intimately cares about us, which is kind of the Christian, belief that God, cares about each one of us, then yes, he's going to care about this.
Amen.
And he's going to be a part of this. Now, is this particular war just or unjust? Should we be involved in this or that? Like, that's a valid thing to argue about. That's fair. But the idea that this is a pagan, and this is beneath the dignity of the Christian God. No, no. If this is a if we're involved in it and we serve him, then it's something that matters to him. It's kind of weird because at the same time, like, you want to be, we ought to be, we ought to hold God in reverence. We ought to, we ought to bow before him. We ought to kneel in his presence. And yet at the same time, there's a weird sort of way in which, like, beneath the dignity of God is not really a Christian way of thinking. Because
we are all his creations.
Our God, well, there's that, and also our God is the God who chose to make himself not just one of us, not just make himself one of us. He made himself a baby, like completely helpless, and had to have his diapers changed for a couple of years. Hey, this is and then as an adult, he made himself one of us who was outcast by his own people, and falsely accused and tortured to death as a criminal. He deliberately rejected so much of what we would call dignity to save us and to make his creation whole again. And so, like, beneath the dignity of God, it doesn't seem a very Christian phrase to me.
Agreed.
To completely turn this around on that choir director.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one, man, because honestly, Rudyard Kipling's work here, it honestly sounds, the prayer aspect of it just sounds so completely wholehearted. I honestly would not mind hearing this in church, because this sounds like a really cool thing. Just to put it to music would be a thing of beauty.
I believe, I haven't watched any of them, but I believe it does exist as like a choral hymn. So you can probably find it on YouTube. So I'll try and look it up, and maybe I'll put a link in the description to one of the if it's on YouTube, to this being sung as well. I would love to hear this in church, just because it would mean I'm in a church that has not been completely feminized.
I just want to hear this in Sabaton.
Yeah.
Great God.
Louis, are you familiar with that band?
I am intimately familiar with this band. Never before have I needed to hear something so badly and not known it until just now. Oh my gosh!
Well,
somebody got contact Sabaton right now.
we can start an email campaign to have them adapt this song. We'll see what happens.
Hashtag Sabaton, please.
But,
yes.
I regret to admit that although I have a YouTube channel, I don't think I have a lot of influence. But we could try.
Oh, dude! If enough people get behind it, anything's possible.
So what was?
What I will say about this, though, the thing about that frustrates me, is that this seems like the wrong time to start praying.
Okay.
Why?
Maybe before the storm clouds had fully gathered. Maybe before the hearts were hard and the swords were sharpened, and the nations had donned their harness. Perhaps then
Well,
would have been a better time to start praying. Now, I will readily admit, it does not say that he wasn't.
Fair.
Right.
That is fair.
But it also doesn't say that they were. It's like, Lord, we don't know why you didn't answer our prayers for this to not happen. But since we must fight, let's fight and die like men. So I'm like, where's the hymn, in the time of trouble? Where's the hymn against turbulence?
I will say Kipling's collected poems are apparently like 800 pages of small print.
Cool.
So it might be in there.
It's probably in there somewhere. That's fine.
I haven't got a print edition yet. I'm probably gonna get myself a copy, even though I could get it for free from Gutenberg.org. It's nice to have some things in print. Anyway.
Here, let me get my magnifying glass. See if I can find it in here somewhere.
I'm not that old yet.
Oh yes. Oh, here it is. Yes. The plea against the coming storm. With the preface here that says it's the direct prequel to the hymn before action. Oh Lord of saving mercy.
Oh, saving mercy.
To thine ears we doth beseech.
We doth beseech.
Calm the hearts of the nations, for they cast the youth to the breach. I'm actually not doing too bad. I'll have to write the rest of that poem.
Yeah, hey, make something. Get
If
something.
I have the bit, I'll have to write the whole thing in this voice in my head.
Yes. Oh, that'd be beautiful.
You did also have there was no hand to hold my beer. So
what? Oh, this I got.
I don't remember that one. You have to look up an older video, man.
Oh
yeah, I'll send you a link to that one, Lewis. That was when we were talking with Jeffro Johnson. So you can enjoy that one later.
I don't know why. Oh, that sounds amazing. I'm sorry. I just had a weird thought that there's a saying that whenever something sounds crazy or insane, you always have this guy who goes, "Here, hold my beer and watch me do this." And I don't know why, but having no hand to hold my beer, that just sounds like a direct relation to that. Is like, "Here, hold my beer." Wait, where'd everybody going?
Oh, hey, come back! I don't want to. I can't spill my Coors. Damn it! Guess I better finish it off before I get started.
Yeah, chug.
Hey, toss me another one. I'll shotgun it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what other.
Anyway. Send me that link too. I need to write that one down. That was a brilliant piece of verse.
Oh.
I'm trying to think what other Kipling poems have we done. We've talked about recessional.
I think we mentioned Kipling, but
so we've done recessional. We did the City of Brass. Those are the ones we talked about as well. What else? And I've recorded for this channel. What is it? Recessional, City of Brass. The Gods of the Copybook Headings. Thank you.
I didn't know if we had discussed that one. Or I might not have been in on it.
No, that was the very
we
first
reference it a heck of a lot, but I don't think we've ever discussed it.
Yeah, that was the very first one I recorded. That was long before I started doing the discussions as well. I wouldn't mind covering it sometime if we can get to it.
Ooh.
That's a good one.
But the Gods of the Copybook Headings, Danegeld, and the Wrath of the Awakened Saxon. And those are some of. I don't think I'm missing any. I think that's all the Kipling poems we've covered.
Wrath of the Awakened Saxon sounds like it's going to come right after this one.
Oh, I'm down.
Oh Lord, we're about to fight. Have mercy on all of our souls.
Actually, no, not really. In fact, okay.
Super Saxon.
Oh, geez.
In fact, for one thing, it apparently that wasn't. I understand that wasn't Kipling's title. I think some other people kind of fiddled around with the text later and the title, which happens. But it's actually basically, the English are a patient, reasonable people, and we don't get angry quickly. But when we do, people remember it.
Yeah.
Hey, Agincourt.
Yeah. Well, I did. What else? I did do Henry V's speech.
You
What is
did?
it? Yes. Yeah. That's on my channel. So I'll what is
bro,
it?
I'm just
I mean,
gonna say.
more recently than Agincourt, there's in Iraq Part 2, there was a British, I think it's an SAS unit that actually cleared some insurgent trenches with a freaking bayonet charge.
Holy cow!
In the 21st century, they were like, boy, chaps, this is a bit sticky. You know what? Fix bayonets. They said this one guy, he won buku medals for it, said he wiped out like 8 dudes in the trench with his bayonet, and he's like, I'm a 6.5 foot tall, burly guy charging at you with a foot of steel sticking out the end of my rifle, and yeah, that's scary. After I'd shanked a few of them, they ran.
That's at the point in time when even the stoutest heart is going, yeah, I want to get off this ride. Where can I stop now? I want to leave.
Well, that's
oh my God, you're stabbing the hell out of Mahmoud. I want to get out of here. I'm next.
one thing. So it's a Scottish Muslim in Iraq.
Oh, now that's gonna be weird. Turbans and kilts. A Scottish Muslim. That's when you get wrapped up on top and on the bottom. That's when we're getting weird.
Well, either that or they have a turban and they're painted blue and there's nothing else. But
oh, why is my brain conjuring up images of that? Ow.
so, but on a slightly more serious note, we were talking about what it's like to be in the middle of battle, and I don't know if I've referred to it. I don't know if I've mentioned it on this show before. I may have, because I just find this fascinating. But if you're interested in military history and like talking about how these things actually play out and how it looks and feels in the middle of these events, there's a great podcast by Dan Carlin. It's called Hardcore History.
Ooh.
And he covers a lot.
Awesome.
He covers a lot of military history, and I remember a couple of years ago he did a series called Kings of Kings, and he talks about, like, in modern combat we very rarely come to the point where it's like, actually, close quarters, sticking a knife in someone else's guts. And we, and it's very difficult for us to do that these days. But in ancient warfare, that's what it was. That
was the norm.
Right. And he says, in a lot of these societies, particularly in small city states, pretty much everyone is going to have been in the army and been doing this at some point, and everyone is going to have had the experience of the up close and personal experience of killing another human being, like not just shooting someone 30 yards away on a battlefield, like taking a spear, sticking it in their guts, and pulling half of their guts out. And he says, and that was like almost every man, would have had that experience and would have seen that done to his friends. And he's like, how does that change a society? And it's so Hardcore History, Dan Carlin, fascinating stuff. Look him up.
Yep. He did a really interesting thing about pants.
Pants?
Yeah, he's talking about generally in a battle, like in a societal clash, you can tell who's eventually going to win out based on who wears the most pants-like garment. Because if you got somebody who's wearing pants, which is a very versatile, rugged, useful, mobile sort of garment in their daily life, versus a group of people who wear togas, robes, whatever, which are much more urbane, less useful, less resilient, less mobile garments.
More
Generally,
cumbersome.
the hardy hill folk wearing their pants are going to come sweep down over the freaking robe-clad goobers in the city, and they're going to take them out.
What about blue
Eventually.
paint? Where does that figure into the equation?
Pants, not paints. Pants shows a certain sort of sense, but of course, then Levi Strauss came along and changed the whole equation. Because now you can wear blue and pants.
That's a lot of true.
Anyway.
So, I think we've covered the poem pretty well. I think I've said most of what I wanted to say. Lewis, did you have any final thoughts on the poem?
Final thoughts on the poem?
Or related to, sprung off of, not directly necessarily.
Well, maybe not final thoughts, but definitely thoughts that we sauced out and that I love is that I now need to hear this as a heavy metal, just battle hymn, just Sabaton is the first one that comes to mind, but just anybody with a band. Yes, please.
Nate. Any final thoughts? You don't have to. If you say I'm done,
yeah, I'm kind of curious.
No, I think we sort of lost a lot of this attitude too. I mean, this is a thought I had that I want to discuss at length another time in another forum. But this idea of preparing yourself to die like a man. Because in all of this, what he said earlier that, he sounds afraid. Well, he totally is. And yet he's not flinching from it. He is going forth with his duty because he has either raised his hands that I'll join, or they called him up and he says, okay, I'm going to serve my country. I gotta do what I gotta do.
Noble.
And so let us, so with our, with our unflinching devotion to this, we got to get in there. I said there's a lot of that that's gone today because, YOLO, right?
Yeah.
The direst warning produced by the modern era. You only live once. And so you can't throw that away. There's no motivation to serve and die because you're giving up your only one precious life for what? We've destroyed the notions of heroism. Well, I say we, the West,
the royal
society that was built on notions of heroism and nobility and sacrifice and, the reward of the afterlife for the faithful, not because you died in battle, but just because you were faithful. It takes away some of the terror. We've destroyed all those notions. Our society has cast them away as though they were of no use. When really, things like that are foundational, and you need to have those sorts of things. You need to have the conviction that dying in a noble cause is a good and worthwhile thing. It's not a desirable thing necessarily, but it is virtuous and proper. Because it is. You just have to be very careful what you choose your worthwhile cause to be. Okay, but we've gotten rid of that. Dying is just bad. No matter why. And so, like I said, this harkens back to an older time. I wouldn't mind this getting a whole lot more press just to expose people to the idea that, maybe being duty-bound unto death and accepting that is actually noble. Because it is.
It sounds to me like we might have to cover a cliche came out of its cage before long. That's another C.S. Lewis poem.
That sounds amazing.
It's it's on. You can look it up on my YouTube channel, or you can look it up independently. It's one of the earlier ones I did on this channel. But there's what you were just saying actually reminds me of something from a poem. I think you were with us, Nate, when we talked about the Lovecraft poem Lines on General Robert Edward Lee. Were you with it? Were you okay? And the last, the closing lines there. What kindlier spirit breathing from on high can teach us how to live and how to die? And and it's like you were saying, there are things worth fighting for, and if you have to, dying for. Although there's also what is it? Was it Patton? I remember there was some 20th century general said no one ever won a
No
war
poor
by
sap
dying.
ever won a war by dying for his country. He won the war by making the other poor sap die for his country.
Yes, Patton.
Patton. Oh, yeah. Speech to the troops before D-Day. The single most rollicking, fightingest speech ever given. NSFW profanity.
But
Yep.
Still amazing.
what I was going to say, there's, in older times, men were afraid to die, to die dishonorably, to die shamefully. And today, most people just are afraid to die. But the thing is, you can do something about dying with honor. You can make choices that, you die honorably or you die dishonorably. You die having done your duty or you die a coward. Like, you can make choices about that. You can't do anything about dying. You're going to die. At some point, you're going to die. So being afraid of dying is kind of weird and kind of stupid. Being afraid of dying in shame, is something you could do something about, and maybe we need to rethink our priorities.
Well, there's a good quote. It says, "Run from it, hide from it. The end always comes." Thanos, 2018.
Yes, bringing the modern culture in. Woo!
Okay, well, thank you guys for joining us tonight. And I hope everyone out there enjoyed the discussion. And we'll do closing out. God be with you.
Also with you.
Amen.